Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto went back in time and fall in love with Tsunade? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Scarred Battlefield. End of 4th Shinobi World War, Daiyoji Ninkai Taisen. Standing in the middle of this battlefield off the southern coast of Fire Country, is a lone man. The man in question stands at 5 feet 8, with a fit and lithe frame, whose very stance screams dangerous. He has spiky sun-kissed blonde hair. His eyes, which are usually a dark blue, are now purple with 3 concentric rings around the black pupil, and 3 tome-like markings on each of the first 2 rings. The Rinnegan. He also has 3 whisker-like marks on each of his cheeks. He is wearing a worn and tattered dark orange tracksuit, with black along the shoulders, zipper, and bottom of his jacket, and black lines down his pant legs. On his feet are black shinobi sandals. Under his jacket he wears mesh armor, and around his forehead is a headband with a leaf symbol. This young man is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Chunin of the village hidden in the leaves, Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox Kyubi no Yoko, hero of the leaf, son of the 4th Hokage, Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and the Red Death, Aka no Shi, Kushina Uzumaki, and most recently the only survivor of the 4th Shinobi War. As he looks around at the bodies of his comrades scattered around, he can't help but to shake his head at the pointless loss of lives. It was all going so well too. Sure, the revelation that the man who had called himself Madara Uchiha was really his father's wayward student Obito Uchiha was shocking. Yes, the army of dead shinobi and kunoichi was freaky and difficult to deal with, but they managed to seal most of them away, and even stop the caster of the impure world reincarnation, Edo Tensei. No surprise, it was Kabuto. Nowhere things had started to go downhill is when the real Madara Uchiha managed to keep himself from being sent back to his death by the ending of the reincarnation technique. After that, all hell broke loose. The man who had once been considered to be on the level of a god just like his rival the first Hokage, Shodai Hokage, had proceeded to lay waste to the 5 Gokage, leaving them all on the edge of death. Then he had joined Obito in his fight against Naruto himself and the only other Jinchuriki yet to have his tailed beast extracted from him, Killer Bee, who held the 8-tailed ox octopus, Hachibi Ushi Oni. Very soon, however, they were overwhelmed and both tailed beasts were extracted from them to complete the 10 tails, Jubi. However, while the 2 Uchiha had been busy with the last 2 Jinchuriki, the third and final Uchiha had shown up with his Team Hawk as well as Orochimaru. The wayward snake Sannin had healed the cage, and just after finishing 4 new undead appeared, shocking everyone. The 4 in question were the first 4 Hokage, Hashirama Senju, Tobirama Senju, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Minato Namikaze. Together the 5 living cage, the 4 reincarnated Hokages, Team Hawk, as well as Orochimaru went off to help Naruto and B. Long story short, the fighting was fast and furious. Naruto, who was at the edge of death, was healed by his teammate Sakura, and then his father placed his half of the 9 tails, whose name is Kurama, into him. After that, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura joined together as Team 7 again to fight the 2 Uchiha, and the battle went well. Naruto managed to convince Obito to turn against Madara, but the ancient Uchiha controlled the other man to use his Rinnegan to bring himself back to life. After he came back to life, Madara sealed the 10 tails into himself, making him its Jinchuriki, causing the battle to become harder. Naruto and Sasuke both were visited by the father of all shinobi and the first man to possess the Rinnegan, the sage of 6 paths Rakudo Sennin, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. The old sage informed them that they were the current reincarnations of his 2 sons, the creators of the Uchiha and Senju clans, Indra and Asura. He then proceeded to give each of them a gift. To Naruto he gave his potent chakra along with the mark of the sun on his right hand. To Sasuke he gave 1 true Rinnegan, also called the Rinne Sharingan, with his visual prowess and the mark of the moon on his left hand. Also Naruto had an added gift, that being a bit of the chakra of every one of the tailed beasts. After leaving the sage, the 2 young men had fought Madara on even footing. even gaining the upper hand on him to the point that he became so weakened that the 10 tails began to take him over and morph his body, only to morph into a woman in possession of very delicate facial features. She had extremely long, sweeping white hair that touched the ground. Most noticeable were 2 brown horns which stuck out from her head. She possessed the Byakugan, and also had a third eye on the center of her forehead, that's eyelids parted vertically. Her eyebrows were cut very short, a symbol of nobility, and she wore a dark shade of lipstick on her lips and a dark shade of nail polish on her long fingernails. She wore the transitional high-collared Haim kimono, which was adorned with intricate lines that are gold and purple and tomo running down the center and edges of the gown. She was also pale-skinned. The woman turned out to be the mother of the sage, Kagaya Otsutsuki, also the mother of all chakra. The battle got much harder after that, to the point that Obito sacrificed his life for Naruto, and left Kakashi with both of his Sharingan eyes for a little while. In the end, Naruto and Sasuke were able to use their marks to seal her away after Sakura hit her from above, and it looked like it was all over, as the spirit of the sage and the spirits of all the dead Kage teleported them back from Kagaya's dimension. However, it didn't last long, as Sasuke turned on them again, attempting to recapture the tailed beasts, and to keep that from happening, Sakura, Kakashi, and Naruto tried to stop him, which ended up with Sasuke killing the first 2, and beginning a fight with Naruto. The 2 young men, who had become like gods themselves, fought tooth and nail. However, Naruto pulled his punches as he still thought his old friend could be redeemed. That illusion was shattered when Sasuke killed the 5 Kage, especially the 5th Hokage Tsunade Senju and the 5th Kage Gaara Sabaku, 2 of the blonde's precious people. After that, the gloves came off and the sage began to fight at full power, even entering into his Ashura avatar and fighting toe-to-toe with Sasuke's Susanoo avatar. In the end, Naruto managed to come out the victor, finally killing the last Uchiha with his original technique, Rasenshuriken. However, as he lay there dying, Sasuke smiled and congratulated his brother in all but blood, and then shocked him by telling him to take his eyes and use them to lead the world into a peaceful future, hence Naruto now having the Rinnegan. After shaking off the horrible memories of the past few days, the blonde turns towards the still present spirits of the sage and Kages, as well as the reincarnated Hokage, as his father steps up to him. Naruto, I'm so sorry that you've had to go through all of this. I can't help but to put most of the blame on myself. If only I'd have been faster that night, then there would have been no need to seal Kurama inside you. You never would have had to go through the hardships you have if not for me, son. The younger blonde just shakes his head sadly. It's not your fault too, San. You did what you had to. No, I place the blame for all of this on the generations before yours. If they could have only stopped trying to prove who was more superior for so long and learned to get along, then it never would have given rise to monsters like Madara Uchiha. Minato can only nod sadly to his son's words, as can all the other Kage. However, Hagoromo gets a brilliant idea. What if you could change that? What if you could go back in time to a point before the Akatsuki, before even the Second Shinobi War? Would you take that chance to change events? Everyone looks at him in shock. However, Naruto only has to think on it for a second before he answers, yes. If it would mean I could save certain people from having to ever deal with the pain and suffering brought on by the Second and Third Wars, then I'd do it. The old sage smiles at this. Good, then I will give you that chance. There is a technique that I know which can be used to send you back in time. However, the power required for it is enormous, and it is why I myself never used it to go back and stop my mother from eating the chakra fruit. The ghost of the third Kage, being ever the brilliant man, decides to ask, if that's true, then how are you to perform the technique now? If you haven't forgotten, you're as dead as we are. The old man simple chuckles. Ah, an inquisitive mind, you remind me of my son Asura, always asking questions. The answer is that with the 4 Hokage, as well as my sons and daughters the tailed beasts, we will have enough chakra required for this technique. However, all of you will have to help with the hand signs, as there are thousands. Everyone nods in understanding of this, even all 9 of the tailed beasts, who are more than happy to do their father a favor. Hagoromo turns to Naruto then. say your goodbyes, because once you have there are some things you and I need to go over about the technique. The blonde nods his head and turns to the four Hokages, first speaking to Hashirama. Lord, first I just want to say that it's been an honor to meet you. I always heard stories about how strong you were but thought they weren't real, but after watching you in action I have to say you're probably the most awesome Hokage ever. This causes the brown-haired man to rub the back of his head with a huge smile on his tan face. Well, thanks Naruto-san. I want to say good luck to you in the past. I'm sure that wherever you're going I'll already be dead, so I'll be sure to watch how you change the world. The blonde shakes his hand then turns to the second. Lord Second, you're every bit the serious and pragmatic man that Iruka-sensei always made you out to be in his lessons. But you're also pretty strong and cool in your own right. Before the other day I had no idea that you were the one to actually invent my dad's famous technique and use it first. In my book that's pretty dang cool. You're a true role model for what a shinobi should be. The white-haired Senju brother just crosses his arms, but has a small smirk on his face. Thank you Uzumaki-san, ordinarily I would reprimand you for wearing orange, but you've showed me that a ninja is more than stealth and doing what is necessary. You have showed me that being a ninja means remaining true to yourself, so never lose that spirit. I'll be watching you from the other side with my brother. He pats him on the shoulder and walks to stand next to his brother. The next person in the line nearly makes the blonde teen cry, however he gives the man a huge smile. Gigi, from you I learned the will of fire, but more importantly I learned what it's like to have a grandfather. You were always there for me when I needed you, and I know that you did your best to give me a normal life and for that I'll always be grateful. I hope that whenever I'm going back to that we can have just as close a relationship, maybe even a father, son or big brother, little brother one. I was so sad when you died old man but I realized that you'd want me to move forward and carry on your will of fire and so I've tried to. I hope you're proud of me. Sarutobi actually embraces the young man in a hug as he speaks. Naruto-kun, you have made this old man very proud. I've watched you from the pure world and have seen the man you've grown into and couldn't be any prouder if you were my actual grandson. You more than anyone embody the will of fire and have become a splendid shinobi. I'm sure that whatever time period you land in that you will achieve your dream and become Hokage. Always stay strong Naruto. When he steps back he pats his shoulder and then moves over to his two teachers and predecessors, leaving Naruto with his father to have a private moment. Minato looks down slightly at his son as he's 2 inches taller than him, and roams over his face, seeing his beloved Kushina in the teen's facial shape, and the rest himself, he smiles. Naruto, my son. Today is your birthday. How old are you now? The younger blonde looks up at him with a sad smile. I'm 17 today dad. The fourth Hokage just smiles wider. 17 huh? Pretty much a grown man. What a man you've grown into. I'm proud of you Naruto, and I'm sure if your mother were here she'd feel the same way, though she'd probably be trying to chase all the girls from you, ha ha ha. Naruto can't help but to chuckle at that and ask, you really think Ka-chan would be proud of me? Minato nods his head, I'm sure she would, and she'd be ecstatic that her Sochi was one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live. Never forget this one important thing no matter where you go. Naruto, your mother and I love you. This causes him to tear up and rush into his father's arms, giving him a huge hug, as the man pats his back. After a few minutes they separate and Naruto turns to the Sage of Six Paths. Alright Senin Gigi, tell me all about this jutsu. The old sage chuckles at his enthusiasm but answers nonetheless. Alright then, first thing you need to know is that we're aiming to send you back to a few years after the first war. Secondly, you won't be going back as you are now, meaning not as a 17-year-old. The technique will do one of two things: A. De-age you to a younger form, or B. Send your spirit and chakra into the body of a freshly born baby. The young sage's jaw drops at this. What? I can't go back as a baby. I'd have to completely start from scratch with all my techniques and everything. I'd take de-aging over that. Speaking of which, how much would I de-age? Hagoromo shakes his head. As far as de aging goes, you would go back to the form of yourself at about 4 years old. Also, you'll get to keep your gifts, meaning you will still retain the bloodlines given to you by the tailed beasts, as well as the Rinnegan and the Six Paths Sage mode. However, you want the Rinne Sharingan or the Six Paths mode right away, those you will have to train to gain back, as will you have to train yourself in the lava, magnet, and boil releases, not to mention the elements that make them up. The blonde crosses his arms at that. I guess that makes sense. Alright, I'm fine with training my skills back up. Heck, I can even take the time to properly learn Fuinjutsu, and then maybe I can find the two ends Hiraishin and learn and improve it myself. Anything else I should know? The old monk nods his head. Yes, as a result of the Rinnegan you now have a major affinity to all 5 elements, and will gain the additional sub-elements of ice and wood, but again you will have to work for them. Also, your appearance will change slightly, mostly just your hair. You will gain the red hair of all Uzumaki. Oh, and your summoning contract to the toads will be void, so you'll have to find another animal to summon, perhaps even of a canine type. Naruto's face brightens slightly at the mention of gaining the wood release and his first real friend Haku's ice release, and even smiles brightly at the fact that he's going to have his mother's pretty red hair finally, but frowns at losing the toads, completely missing the hint of what animal he should gain a contract with instead. After a few moments takes a breath. Okay, I understand. Well, let's get this show on the road. Six Paths GG. The old sage smiles and nods his head as he singles all the cage to begin. Their hand sings as he begins his, and the tailed beasts begin to focus their chakra, causing a huge flare of light. Once all the signs are done and the right amount of energy is gathered, the old man intones, hidden samsara technique, space-time transportation. After he says this, a rip in space and time opens up in front of Naruto, and the blonde takes one more look at his father and the other Hokages before he steals his nerves and jumps into the swirling mass of lights, and seconds later the young half of Kurama jumps in after him and the rip closes. The 4 Hokages' bodies begin to break apart as Minato turns to the old sage. Are you sure this will work? That Naruto will be able to change things? The original god of Shinobi, Shinobi no Kami, looks seriously at the man. I have the utmost faith in him. After all, he is the current reincarnation of my son Asura. However, he won't be able to change everything. The second and third wars will still occur, however their outcomes will be altered due to his presence. He will also be able to bridge the gaps between the nations over time and keep groups like Akatsuki from having to form at all. In the end, all you can do is believe in your son, as I believed in mine. Minato nods his head at this as he finishes breaking apart, and his spirit as well as those of all the other cage present head back to the pure world. Hagoromo takes one last looks at the remaining 8-tailed beasts and smiles. You are all free, my children. Live your lives how you see fit from here on. Goodbye. With that, he fades away back to his own dimension, as the tailed beasts all head their separate ways. Inside the portal, pain. That is all he can feel as he hurls through time. He can feel all his bones cracking and shrinking in on themselves, and he knows he's de-aging. All he can see aside from the lights of the tunnel are images playing backwards of events from the elemental nations. Then he feels an influx of demonic chakra enter his system and in his hazy state asks internally, Kurama, what's going on? What are you doing in there? From within his mindscape he gets a response from his tenant and partner, sorry about that, Kit. That influx just now was my young half coming back and joining back with me. Good news is I'm whole again, and that means you'll have more power to use from me later on. Bad news is that your chakra reserves are going to be double what they originally were when you were 4, which means way more chakra control training. All he can do is sigh, just great. Oh well, at least I might finally get my chakra control up to a good enough level to perform genjutsu and even medical ninjutsu. Just after having that thought, he sees the portal open back up and knows that he's about to be deposited at his destination. Hidden Leaf Village. Training Ground 7. 1 YAFW, year after First War. The skies around the village can be seen clouding over and becoming dark, something which makes all the shinobi in the village go on edge as they can tell this isn't a natural occurrence. In Training Ground 7 there's a large flash of light, the opening of a rift in space, and then a huge explosion which scares away all animals in the area. After the explosion the rift closes and disappears, and when the smoke clears it shows the small body of a 4-year-old Naruto in a crater. Only he's different. Whereas before he had blonde hair, his hair is now blood red, still spiky but much shorter than it was. Think his hair 2 years after the Fourth War, and his whisker marks are now gone. Also his clothes have changed, he's now in a white t-shirt with the Uzumaki spiral on the front, and tan-colored shorts, and on his feet are white shinobi sandals. After a few minutes a group shinobi arrive in the training grounds, surrounding the crater. These shinobi are all wearing white animal masks, they are the elite unit of the village the Anbu, and leading them is a young man of 21, he stands at 5 feet 4, is a tan-skinned man with spiky dark brown hair, and a small goatee on his chin, and brown eyes. He wears an all-black jumpsuit with mesh segments over the lower portions of his limbs, and a green gauntlet that covers much of his right arm. He also wears an armored hood with a bandana-like forehead protector over this, tied with 2 long straps, and on the back of his jumpsuit is the kanji for Third Hokage. This man is the third Hokage of the Leaf, the new god of shinobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He takes in the scene quickly, and seeing that there is no danger he motions for his men to stand down and he makes his way into the crater and to the child. He turns the boy over and looks him over searching for any wounds. After a few moments he finds none but can sense that the child is suffering from chakra exhaustion. The Anbu with a cat mask steps forward. Lord Hokage, we should check the boy for traps. He could be a spy. The young man shakes his head. No, that's not necessary. I've already checked him for any traps and found none. He has chakra exhaustion and needs to go to the hospital. Besides, based on his hair color and the clan crest on his shirt, I'd say he's an Uzumaki, and if that's true then he won't be harmed. We'll have to wait till he wakes up to find out how he got here. You're all dismissed. With that they all disappear via body flicker, heading back to their posts, while Hiruzen himself body flickers to the hospital to have the boy treated. When he arrives he explains the situation to the nurses and doctors and they take the red head to give him the standard treatment for chakra exhaustion. He also orders that the boy be placed in a private room, and to be notified as soon as he wakes. With that done he heads off to the Senju compound to have a chat with the current head and matriarch of the clan, Mito Uzumaki Senju. Senju compound. Minutes later. A few minutes later Sarutobi arrives to the Senju compound, which is one of the 3 largest compounds in the village, rivaled only by the Uchiha and Hyuga clan compounds. The compound itself is like a mini village, surrounded by wooden walls all laden with various seals to strengthen them. Inside there are many houses for the members of the clan, and as he walks through the streets of the compound he notices a few houses empty as a result of the residents having died in the First War, which only ended last year. Also as he walks he's greeted by many of the still living clan members, to which he just nods his head at them. Eventually he reaches his destination, the main house which belongs to the head of the clan. It's a 2-story traditional Japanese-style house with shoji doors, and above the front door is a huge version of the Senju clan symbol, a Vajra. He knocks on the door and awaits an answer. A few moments later the door is answered, but not by who he expected, as he looks down and sees a small 4-year-old girl. The girl has long blonde hair which is done up into twin short pigtails, she is fair-skinned with big brown eyes, and her cheeks have a bit of rosiness to them that comes from youth. She is wearing a cream-colored sundress. This girl is Tsunade Senju, granddaughter to Mito and the late first Hokage Hashirama Senju, second in line to the Senju clan after her own father. Seeing the little girl, Hiruzen smiles down at her. Hello Tsunade-chan, is your grandmother home by any chance? The little blonde, upon seeing who's at the door, gives a beaming smile. Ba-chan is in the sitting room. Come on, I'll show you where Saru Oji. She grabs his hand and tries to drag him along. All he can do is chuckles at the little girl's enthusiasm and go along with her, remembering to kick off his sandals in the entryway first. As they walk to the sitting room, Tsunade is babbling away about her training and how the academy is going as she joined it just this year. Hiruzen for his part only makes small comments here and there. However, she abruptly asks, "Say Saru Oji-san, why do you need to talk to Ba-chan?" This catches the Hokage off guard slightly. However, he catches himself and answers, "It's a personal matter, Tsunade-chan. I'm sure Mito-sama will tell you about it much later on." This causes the girl to pout. However, it doesn't last long as they reach the sitting room and she opens the door and announces their arrival, "Ba-chan. Saru Oji is here to see you." Inside the room sits a woman a little older than 50, however looks no older than 30. She has long bright red hair and large pupil-less eyes. She wears an elaborate, high-collared kimono with the Uzushiogakure symbol on the back of the obi, which is tied around her waist. Her hair is arranged into buns with hair pins in them and 3 clips in the front. She also wears a dark shade of red lipstick and has a gem-like marking on her forehead. She also wears tags with kanji written on them in her hair decals. All in all, she's a beautiful woman and one of the strongest kunoichi to ever live. This is Mito Uzumaki Senju. Mito, upon seeing both her granddaughter and her husband and brother-in-law's student, smiles at them. "Su-chan, how many times have I told you not to just barge in?" This causes the girl to scowl slightly. "Sorry, Ba-chan." The woman nods her head and turns to the Hokage himself. "Saru-chan, how good to see you. Though I'm surprised that you could take the time away from your duties to visit. Is this a social call or part of your official duties as Sandaime Hokage?" The 21-year-old sighs at her still calling him Saru-chan, but shakes his head and responds, "Actually, it's a little of both, Mito-sama. I need to have a private word with you about an incident that happened about an hour ago." The red-haired woman nods her head and turns to Tsunade. "Su-chan, you run along now, maybe go and play with some of the other children." The little blonde nods her head and runs off, as Sarutobi steps into the room and closes the door, and a moment later the room glows blue, then stops, as Mito has just activated a privacy seal. He takes a seat on a mat opposite her and begins, "Now, as you know, 1 hour ago the skies over the village suddenly clouded over and darkened." She nods to this as he continues, "Well, I knew it wasn't a natural occurrence and at first feared maybe Cloud Village was launching an attack with their storm release users. That turned out not to be the case. There was suddenly an explosion in the 7th training grounds, and so I and a group of Anbu went to check out the scene. What we found was not what we expected at all." Mito hums at this and asks, "What did you find then?" The younger man sighs as he answers, "We found a crater, obviously created by the explosion. However, inside the crater wasn't an enemy nin, but a child." This shocks the redhead as her eyes widen slightly. "A child? How old?" The man nods. "Yes, a child, about the same age as Tsunade-chan, I would guess, so about 4 years old. However, that's not the oddest thing. The oddest thing is that despite being in the middle of a huge explosion, he had no injuries at all. The only thing that looked wrong with him was chakra exhaustion. So after checking him over for any traps of any kind and finding nothing, I ordered the Anbu back to their positions and took him to the hospital where he is being treated now." Mito sighs in relief at that news, but looks at him in confusion. "While it is good that the child is okay, I don't see why you had to come here to inform me of his arrival." Hiruzen chuckles at that and rubs the back of his head nervously. "Well, you see, what I left out was that the boy has blood-red hair, and was wearing a shirt with the Uzumaki symbol on the front of it. Going off those things, I deduced that he's possibly a member of the Uzumaki clan, and therefore one of your kinsmen." She sighs at this and decides to reprimand him. "You should have mentioned that to begin with, Saru-chan. But just because the boy was wearing my clan's symbol and has red hair does not mean he is an Uzumaki. Not everyone with red hair is of the Uzumaki clan, baka." The 21-year-old nods at her point. "True, but there's an easy way to find out if he is in fact an Uzumaki. First is to wait till he awakes and ask him, and second is to see just how large his chakra pool is when it's fully restored." Mito nods her head at this and the two then begin to talk about other things. However, when the conversation moves to his love life, he decides that it's time to go and heads back to the front door. Just after he puts on his sandals, the door opens and in walks a man. This man is taller than himself, standing at 5 feet 10, with straight dark brown hair and brown eyes, and tan skin like himself. This man is Itama Senju, the son of Mito and Hashirama, father of Tsunade, and heir to the Senju clan, named for one of his father's brothers who died during the clan wars. Itama, upon seeing him, smiles. Hiruzen. Good to see you. Are you leaving? Sarutobi smiles at his slightly older friend. Yes, afraid so. I've been visiting with your mother, but now I have to get back to my arch enemy. Paperwork. This causes Itama to chuckle and pat him on the shoulder. I don't envy you being Hokage, my friend. Well, see you around. Try to come back sometime and we'll spar. The younger man smiles at his friend and nods his head, as the man takes off his sandals and heads into the house, while he himself body flickers away back to the Hokage Tower. Leaf Hospital. 2 days later. Naruto groans as he begins to wake up. The first thing that hits his senses is the smell of disinfectant and bleach, and he knows right away where he's at. Great, I'm in the hospital, the one place I hate the most. Wonder how long I've been out. A moment later he opens his eyes to see the white ceiling of the hospital, confirming his thoughts, as he lifts his right arm up to look at it and sees how small it is, meaning the old sage's jutsu worked. A few seconds later a nurse walks in to check his vitals and seeing him awake smiles. Ah, you're awake, little one. How are you feeling? He looks at the woman for a moment and answers, I feel okay, I guess. How long have I been out, nurse-san? The woman giggles at this and responds, my name is Nanase, little one. You've been here 2 days recovering from chakra exhaustion. Now lay still while I check up on your condition. He nods his head as she does some hand signs and checks his vitals and sees how his chakra pools are doing. However, when she does, her eyes widen, as he has more chakra than most Chunin. She quickly gets over her shock and stops running her diagnostics. Well, everything seems to be good, and might I say you have some impressive chakra levels for a 4-year-old. He blushes a little at this. Thank you. So can I get out of here now? She shakes her head at his question. I'm afraid not. You'll have to stay here a while longer. We have to inform Hokage-sama that you've awakened, and I'm sure he'll have some questions for you. So until then, just rest up and we'll bring you some breakfast. With that, she turns and walks out the door to inform the Chunin guarding his room to summon the Hokage. After a few minutes she returns with a tray of hospital breakfast for him, which he begrudgingly eats even though it tastes like crap. While he's eating his breakfast, Sarutobi walks in, and when Naruto sees him his eyes widen slightly, as he recognizes the man, but didn't think he'd be coming back to when he was so young. He quickly covers up his surprise as the third Hokage comes over and sits at his bedside. Well, young man, it's good to see you're awake. You were in quite a state when we found you. The nurse tells me your chakra pools are fully restored and that you can leave here today after a few shots. The redhead nods at this, even though he makes a face at the thought of shots. However, Sarutobi continues on, now I have a few questions for you. First off, can you tell me your name? The boy thinks on it a second and then decides to go with his actual name and answers, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Who are you, mister? The man chuckles at this, my name is Hiruzen Sarutobi, and I'm the third Hokage. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Now can you tell me how you ended up here in the leaf? The redhead starts to panic internally, trying to come up with a believable story. However, he suddenly gets a great backstory and gets a sad look on his face. He starts his story, I'm not sure how I got here, Lord Hokage. All my life I've lived with my parents in the land of waves, Nami no Kuni. But recently they died, attacked by bandits, and I was orphaned. They always said we came from a proud lineage but never elaborated, though they did say that if I was ever in trouble I could go to the Hidden Leaf Village, and I planned to in a few years. But when I was going through some of my 2chan stuff I found this seal and it activated, and then after that it's a blank. Next thing I know I'm waking up here. Sarutobi listens intently, and thinks over the boy's story, and notices a few inconsistencies, but decides not to call him on them. I see. Well, Naruto-kun, it seems you may have stumbled on an experimental seal meant for teleportation. You're lucky that it didn't kill you and all you ended with was chakra exhaustion. Now your parents were right when they said you come from a proud lineage. You are a member of the Uzumaki clan of the Land of Whirlpools. The Uzumaki clan is well known for their incredible pools of chakra, their longevity, and their skills in fuinjutsu as well as kenjutsu. He sees Naruto's eyes light up at this as he continues on. Also, the Uzumaki clan is the cousin clan to one of the founding clans of the Leaf, the Senju. As a matter of fact, the current head of the Senju clan is a woman named Mito Uzumaki Senju, and I'm sure that she would love to take you in being that your clansman. She also has a granddaughter your age that I'm sure you'll get along with. Naruto smiles and nods at this in response. Good, then after your shots I'll take you to meet with Mito-sama. The redhead gets confused at this and asks, why do you call her Mito-sama? Aren't you the leader of the village? Hiruzen chuckles at this, ha ha ha, yes I am, but Mito-sama is the widow of the first Hokage, and holds a high position within the village. That is why everyone gives her the proper respect and calls her Mito-sama, all except her immediate family, that is. Naruto nods at this as he finishes his food and Sarutobi stands up and motions for the doctor and nurse to come in and give him his shots and whatnot. While they're giving him his shots, they also take some blood to run tests on. When it's all done, everyone walks out of the room so he can change back into his clothes. When he's done with that, Sarutobi signs him out of the hospital and leads him to the Senju compound. Senju main house. After walking through the village together and talking a little more, they eventually reach the Senju compound. Naruto's first reaction to the sight of it is to have his jaw drop at just how large it is. However, that's nothing to his reaction to the main house. This is where I'm gonna be living. Question mark. It's a mansion. Sarutobi chuckles at this. You're not wrong. However, what you should know is that the first Hokage himself built this house using his bloodline, the wood release Mokuden. In fact, he built this entire compound using his powers. Then Mito-sama went around and applied strengthening seals to each of the homes and the walls, which make the wooden constructs as strong as steel. I'm sure that she will be teaching you how to do such things in the future. The redhead can only nod at this as the young man knocks on the door. Moments later it's answered, except this time by Mito herself. Seeing this, Sarutobi bows to her slightly. Mito-sama, it's good to see you again. I've someone for you to meet. He then grips Naruto's shoulder and pushes him forward slightly. Mito Uzumaki Senju, meet Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki, meet Mito Uzumaki Senju. Mito looks at the 4-year-old with a critical eye and does notice that he has a lot of the typical Uzumaki features, especially the red hair. However, it's as she uses her meager chakra sensing ability that she confirms he's indeed an Uzumaki. Incredible, only 4 and already he has the reserves of a high Chunin. That tears it. There is no doubt in my mind that this child is of my clan. With that thought in mind, she smiles sweetly at him and bends down slightly to be at his level. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Welcome to your new home. I hope that you find it comfortable. Naruto bows his head and responds, thank you, Mito-sama, it's nice to meet you too. I've never met any other member of my family before. The older redhead scowls at this slightly, but her face quickly softens and she uses her right hand to lift his face so he's looking right at her. None of that, Sama, stuff out of you, little one. We are family, so therefore you may call me Mito Obasan. Now come inside so that you can meet the rest of the family. Saru-chan, thank you for bringing him. If you wouldn't mind filling out the paperwork to have him entered into the academy for me, that would be appreciated. She proceeds to bring Naruto inside and shuts the door before the Hokage has a chance to answer, as he stands there blinking in shock. What the? Sigh, I guess I have no choice but to comply. I swear I should have just let Danzo have the Hokage seat and let him deal with all the paperwork. On second thought, it's better that I'm Hokage and he's an Anbu captain. He'd have us still at war. He then shakes his head and disappears in a leaf body flicker. Inside the house, Mito leads little Naruto towards the family room where her son, daughter-in-law and granddaughter are sitting. As they walk, she tells him all about the history between the Senju and Uzumaki clans, regaling him with the story of how her father secured the alliance between the cousin clans with her marriage to Hashirama and how they came to love each other in time. Eventually they reach the family room and enter as everyone looks curiously at the little red head. Sitting with Itama and Tsunade is another woman. She has long blonde hair with two bangs that perfectly frame her face. She has fair skin and green eyes, with a buxom figure. This woman is a Maya Senju. The three look curiously at the matriarch as Itama asks, "Ka-chan, who's the kid?" Mito smiles and places a hand on the boy's shoulder. This Itama-chan is Naruto Uzumaki. He is 4 years old and an orphan, and as he is a member of my clan, I have volunteered to take him in and raise him. Naruto-kun, this is my immediate family. The man is my only son and next head of the Senju clan, Itama. The blonde-haired woman is his wife and my daughter-in-law Maya. Finally, the little girl sitting on Itama's lap is my granddaughter Tsunade-chan. She's the same age as yourself. Naruto waves at everyone. Hello, nice to meet you all. Tsunade gets down off her father's lap and walks straight up to the redhead, inspects him closely, which kind of freaks him out, but only because there's a miniature version of his mother figure staring him in the face. After a few moments she backs off, smiles and puts out her hand. Nice to meet you, Naruto-san. Wanna be friends? The redhead blinks at this, but smiles nonetheless and takes her hand, shaking it, and responds, "Yeah, sure, Tsunade-san, I'd like that." With that she drags him over to the couch and they little group get to know each other better for the rest of the day, eating a small family dinner, and then retire for the night. Mito leads Naruto to an empty room on the second floor and opens the door for him. "This will be your room from now on, Naruto-kun. I know that you just lost your parents recently, but I hope in time that you will come to view us as your family and this house as your home. Tomorrow morning after breakfast we will go out into the village to get you some more clothes, as well as supplies for the academy. Rest well, little one, good night." Naruto for his part nods his head and responds, "Thank you, Mito-oba, I'm really grateful for all this. Good night." She smiles at his as he heads inside the room and closes the door behind him. He proceeds to head over to the bed and lay down, then he closes his eye and when he reopens them he finds himself in the familiar space of his mindscape. When he looks down at the water he sees his 17-year-old self reflected back except with his new red hair and minus the whiskers, then he looks up at the towering form of Kurama. "Well, we made partner. I've gotta say it was a shock seeing Sarutobi Gigi that young, but even more shocking to see Ba-chan as a little girl." The giant fox just snorts at that. "Tell me about it, Kit. I'd estimate that we're back about 15 years before the Second Shinobi War. Starting tomorrow you're going to have to haul and start training to get back in shape and get a leg up on becoming strong enough to stop things from going pear-shaped. Also, don't draw on my chakra when you're around any leaf ninja, it will only end badly, seeing as in this time I'm sealed inside of Mito." Naruto nods to that and yaws, "Alright, well, I'm going to actually go to sleep, talk to you another time, Kurama." With that he disappears from his mind, getting his rest for the days ahead. And cut. Well, there it is. I hope you all like it. I think I'm going to do a second chapter no matter what. And next chapter will have Naruto in the academy back then. He'll meet with Orochimaru and Jiraiya. I'll show a little of Naruto's training, including him learning an actual taijutsu style. I was thinking of doing something no one I know has done before and give him the style of Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star. Tell me what you think. Anyway, please read and review. If I get enough reviews I will definitely post the second chapter. Until next time. Just in. Community. Forum. More. Naruto of the Yonin by Black Flame of Destruction. Anime Naruto rated M. English. Adventure. Naruto U. Tsunade S. Words. 70k plus. Faves. 1k plus. Follows. 1k plus. Published. October 14, 2015. Updated. July 26, 2016. 361. Chapter 2. Academy. Training. Graduation. Okay, well, the response for the first chapter of this was so great that I decided to do the second chapter, and here it is. This one is longer than the last and there are a few little time skips, but it covers Naruto's academy days and the training he does on the side. Also, this chapter he gets his taijutsu style, which some of you will know. It's called Hokuto Shinken. Anyway, enough with the wait, here's the chapter. Hey dumbass. Human speech. I need to get some food. Normal human thoughts. Shut up, furball. Human thought speech. I will eat you. Summon-tailed beast speech, spoken jutsu. Why is he so dumb? Summon-tailed beast normal thoughts, thought jutsu. Who you calling furball? Summon-tailed beast thought speech. This is going to be Naruto x Tsunade pairing. Rated M for language and future limes. Chapter 2. Academy, Training Days, and Graduation. Last time. The giant fox just snorts at that. Tell me about it, Kit. I'd estimate that we're back about 15 years before the Second Shinobi War. Starting tomorrow, you're going to have to haul and start training to get back in shape and get a leg up on becoming strong enough to stop things from going pear-shaped. Also, don't draw on my chakra when you're around any leaf ninja. It will only end badly, seeing as in this time I'm sealed inside of Mito. Naruto nods to that and yaws. Alright, well, I'm going to actually go to sleep. Talk to you another time, Kurama. With that, he disappears from his mind, getting his rest for the days ahead. Now, Senju main house. 5 a.m. next day. Our red-haired hero awakens with the sun. As he sits up in his bed, he proceeds to rub the sleep from his eyes, then he stretches his arms over his head as he releases a yawn. After that's done, he hops out of bed, his feet hitting the cold wooden floor softly as he goes over to the window and looks outside to see the sun just barely in the sky, and smiles. Alright, time to get to work on getting my skills back up to scratch. Later on I have to go shopping with Mito Oba, so I think I'll just spam clones to work on shurikenjutsu and chakra control. I myself will do physical exercises, have to see if Mito Oba will buy me some wrist and ankle weights to help make my body stronger and faster. With that in mind, he exits his room as quietly as he possibly can, careful to wake anyone, and heads downstairs. Once he is sure he hasn't woken anyone, he makes his way to the front door, puts on his sandals and heads out the door quietly, quickly making his way out of the Senju compound. As he's walking through the village, he's thinking of where he can go to train in private, where no one will see or hear him, when it suddenly comes to him, the Forest of Death. So with his training ground chosen, he heads to the 44th Training Grounds, aka the Forest of Death. After 20 minuets of walking, he reaches the Forest of Death, which is a training ground made up of hundreds of tall trees, and is surrounded on all sides by a tall fence with multiple gates. Naruto proceeds to put his hands in the ram sign and focus chakra to his legs, and when he feels he has enough, he takes a huge leap and completely clears the top of the fence and lands inside the forest. He proceeds to run deeper inside till he finds a clearing with a river running through it. Okay, this will do nicely. Time to do this. He puts his fingers in a cross-shaped sign and calls out, Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, Taju Kage Bushin no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, 50 clones appear, all looking identical to their creator, who clicks his tongue at the number but shakes it off and proceeds to give out orders. Alright, listen up. I want you guys to split up into 2 groups of 25. The first group will work on chakra control, start with leaf balancing. I don't want to go through life this time with sucky chakra control. Group 2, you're working on shurikenjutsu. Since we have no shuriken or kunai to work with yet, use rocks and sharpened sticks. The clones all nod and salute at this and separate into 2 groups as ordered to go off and do what they're supposed to do. Naruto meanwhile decides to start his exercises, starting off with some stretching to loosen up the muscles, then after that he starts off with 20 laps around the clearing. He finishes his last lap 25 minutes after he back and is only mildly out of breath, so he decides to take a 5-minute breather. He goes over to the stream and takes a handful of water from it and drinks it down. After his break, he gets back to work, proceeding to do 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, 50 squats, 50 jumping jacks, and lastly 50 chin-ups using a low-hanging tree branch. When he finishes his workout he looks up at the sky and estimates the time to be around 7 a.m., so he decides now is a good time to head back to the Senju house and get a shower, have some breakfast and get ready for his day with Mito. Before he leaves he tells the clones to dispel in groups of 5 2 hours from now. Getting confirmation from the 2 groups of clones he proceeds to exit the Forest of Death and head back into the village proper. As he walks through on his way back to the Senju compound he notices that all the shops are now open or just opening, and he waves back to those who waved to him first. After another 15 minutes he gets back to the Senju compound and as he walks through the streets every Senju clansman that sees him smiles and greets him kindly, to which he responds in kind. Senju main house. The redhead enters the house and takes off his shoes at the door and proceeds to head towards the stairs, however he hears a throat clear from the family room and turns to find Mito standing there with her arms crossed over her chest. "Where have you been, young man?" Naruto chuckles nervously but answers, "I went out to train. My 2-chan started training me to be a ninja before he died and he said that no matter what happened I should stick to my daily training. So I got up at 5 a.m. and headed out to find a good training spot. Once I found a good spot I started with some stretches, then did some laps around the training ground, then did 50 sit-ups, push-ups, jumping jacks, squats, and chin-ups. Then I worked on my shuriken and kunai throwing for a bit, and then finished off with chakra control." Mito's eyes widen at this news, though she is slightly surprised that he's doing such intensive physical training at 4 years old. Even Tsunade, who's been having physical training from herself, Amaya, and even Itama here and there since she was 3 only does 20 of every exercise, and has yet to work on chakra control. She quickly shakes it off and scowls. "That's all good, Naruto-kun, however you didn't have to leave the compound to train, we have a training ground behind the house. From this point on you will use those training grounds. I don't want to wake up to find you missing from the house and the compound ever again. I thought that you had run away." Naruto's eyes widen at this as he steps off the stairs and walks over and hugs the older redhead, shocking her. "I'm sorry, Mito Oba. I didn't mean to cause you any fear or hurt. I promise from now on I'll use the training grounds out back for my morning training. Please forgive me." Mito just smiles kindly and wraps him in a hug. "You are forgiven, Naruto-kun. Now march upstairs and take a shower, you stink. I'll have some fresh clothes placed on your bed for you, and when you're dressed come on down to the dining for breakfast." The younger redhead smiles and nods his head, rushing upstairs to get freshened up. 20 minutes later finds Naruto entering the dining room wearing different clothes. The outfit he now has on consists of dark gray pants that go down to his shins, a short-sleeved red kimono shirt under which is mesh armor, tied at the waist with a dark orange sash. All in the eyes of the entire Senju family he looks a lot more like a ninja now. The first to greet him is the ever-energetic Tsunade. "Good morning, Naruto-san." He smiles at her and responds, "Good morning, Tsunade-san." Then he turns to her parents, "Good morning, Itama-san, Amaya-san." The two reply to him in sync, "Good morning, Naruto-kun-san." As he takes his seat, which is right next to Tsunade and across from Itama at the table, with Tsunade being across from her mother and Mito at the head. As they eat their breakfast of steamed rice, miso soup, grilled fish, rolled omelets, tamagoyaki, tsukemono pickles, and dried seaweed nori, Itama decides to bring something up to Naruto. "So Naruto-kun, Ka-chan says that you left at 5 this morning to train and didn't even leave so much as a note. Do you distrust us so much you wouldn't let us know where you are and what you're doing?" The little redhead swallows his food as Mito glares slightly at her son. However, before she can reprimand him, Naruto responds, "It's not that I distrust any of you, Itama-san. It's just that I'm used to getting up really early to train and I didn't want to wake anyone, plus it never crossed my mind to leave a note seeing as usually I'd be with my 2-chan to train." Seeing the conversation taking a sad turn, Tsunade decides to try to lighten the mood. "Say, Naruto-san, what kind of training do you do? Maybe we could train together from now on." The red-haired boy smiles gratefully to the blonde girl as he responds, "It's nothing to major, I do 20 laps, then after a 5-minute break for some water and to catch my breath, I do 50 each of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, jumping jacks, and chin-ups. After that I work for an hour on shuriken and kunai throwing, and then finish up the last hour with chakra control training. I'm still working on the leaf sticking exercise." Even Itama and Amaya's eyes slightly widen at this, as that's quite the workload for a 4-year-old, and can only wonder why his father would start him with something like that. Tsunade however pouts, "You get to do chakra control training. That's not fair. Tu-chan, Ka-chan, and Ba-chan said I have to wait until we start working on it in the academy." Naruto chuckles at this. "Well, to be fair, my Ka-chan started me on chakra control training right after I unlocked my chakra. According to her, because of my lineage I have way more chakra than most kids my age. I think she said I have as much chakra as a chunin or something, so it's pretty important for me to work on controlling it." All the adults nod along to this, especially Itama, who decides to voice his thoughts. "He's right, Su-chan. Being a full Uzumaki as he probably is means that his chakra levels are much higher than any other child, including yourself." The blonde girl turns to her father about to ask how he knows that, however he's already anticipated the question. "I know from experience. Being half Uzumaki myself, I have larger than average chakra reserves. Of course being half Senju makes them even slightly larger, but helps me with control. When I was your age I had the chakra levels of a fresh genin while everyone else in my age group had academy level chakra pools. The only non-Uzumaki or Senju that I've ever known that had a lot of chakra as a kid was the third Hokage." Mito nods along to this, remembering how much chakra the 23-year-old had even as a child of 8, however she shakes her head and clears her throat. Enough of this discussion. "Tsunade-chan, since Naruto-kun is now a member of this household, if you wish it and he agrees, he can start helping you to learn chakra control training." The blonde beams at this and turns to the younger redhead, who only smiles slightly and nods his head, which causes her to get excited and hug him tightly, saying over and over again, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." All he can do is slightly blush from the contact, and pat her back. The adults all laugh at the two children, however Tsunade eventually lets go of Naruto and goes back to eating, allowing the redhead to do the same. Once breakfast is done, Mito stands up and turns to the two children. "Naruto-kun, Tsunade-chan, go get on your sandals, the three of us are going into the village to go shopping. Naruto-kun needs more clothes, as even though Itama-chan's old clothes fit him okay, I don't want him to dress in his hand-me-downs. Also we need to get Naruto-kun the standard sets of training kunai, shuriken, senbon, and ninja wire." Tsunade immediately heads for the door to put on her sandals, however Naruto looks shyly at the older redhead. He rubs the back of his head and asks, "Say Mito-oba, can we maybe also pick up some wrist and ankle weights? I'd like to use them for training to help increase my strength and speed. I'd heard my Tu-chan talking once about how weights would help me to get stronger without keeping me from growing." Mito is surprised by his request but internally nods to his father's foresight. "Of course we can, Naruto-kun. That's a very good idea, and in fact I think I'll pick up an extra set for Tsunade-chan. Tell me, Naruto-kun, did your parents begin to teach you any taijutsu style?" The younger redhead shakes his head. "No. Though Tu-chan did show me his own style, he called it Dragon Fist Ruken. He said his style might not suit me, and that he had a little knowledge on other styles that he'd teach me next year." The woman nods along to this and comes up with an idea. "Okay, well, Tsunade-chan is already being trained in the Senju style taijutsu by her father. Most of the kids at the academy are either learning the academy style or have begun learning their clan's style if they have one. I'll take you into the Senju archives later and we'll find you a taijutsu style to learn, okay?" The boy nods his head to this, and then the two head over to the door to put on their sandals, finding an impatiently waiting Tsunade, and after apologizing to her they head out the door. They spend most of the afternoon going from shop to shop. At the clothing store Naruto finds an outfit that he likes, retaining the red kimono shirt and orange sash, but making the shirt blood red color to match his hair and adding the Uzumaki swirl to the back in white. He trades out the gray pants for dark red ones, as well as changing his white sandals for black, and he gets multiple sets of this outfit. At the shinobi supply store he gets 2 holsters, 2 sets each of practice kunai, shuriken, and senbon, as well as 3 spools of ninja wire. Mito also buys 2 sets of ankle and wrist weights, with the initial weight of the wrists being 5 pounds each and the ankles being 10 pounds each. After their shopping is done they head to a small restaurant for lunch, at which point Mito explains to Tsunade why she got the 2 sets of weights and hands 1 set to her granddaughter. After lunch they head back to the house, and when they arrive Amaya greets them with a slightly sad face, which concerns Tsunade and Mito, the second of which asks, "What's wrong Amaya-chan?" The blonde woman sighs as she answers her mother-in-law, "Itama is leaving on another mission. He promised me that he'd be home for a week after he got back from the last one, and it's only been 3 days. We got into an argument and he said that it was his duty as the son of the first Hokage to show the strength of the Senju clan." Mito shakes her head at this and pats the woman on the shoulder. He's so much like both his father and his uncle. However, instead of standing here sulking, you should take Tsunade-chan and the 3 of you should spend as much time together as possible till he leaves for the mission. I'll have a discussion with Saru-chan about not giving Itama any more missions for a month after he returns from this one. Amaya smiles gratefully to her for her words and takes Tsunade by the hand and leads her up to she and Itama's room to do just that. Mito then turns to Naruto. "Alright Naruto-kun, I'll take you to the basement now. That is where the Senju clan archives are at, although it's really just a big library filled with many scrolls on Tai, Nin, Gen, Ken, and even some Fuinjutsu." The 2 redheads go down to the basement, where Mito proceeds to take out a kunai and cuts her finger with it, taking the bleeding digit and swiping it across the door, which then proceeds to glow as seals spread over it. Then there's a click and the glow recedes. Mito smiles and opens the door leading him inside. "What you just witnessed Naruto-kun is a piece of our clan's specialty, Fuinjutsu, moreover that was a blood seal. You will of course be learning how to create blood seals, but not for a long time. Anyway, the scrolls are arranged by type and the taijutsu scrolls are second shelf on the left." Naruto heads over to the taijutsu shelf and begins to browse through the styles there. After looking for a while he suddenly feels a pull towards a specific scroll. The scroll in question is blue in color with a picture of stars making up the Big Dipper, and the kanji on the front of it reads Hokuto Shinken, Big Dipper God Fist. As he reads the information on the style he begins to smile more and more, until eventually he's sold. He rolls it back up and heads over to Mito. "I found it. The perfect style for me to learn." He presents the scroll to her and when she sees which one it is she gasps, as the style he wants to learn is said to come from before the time of the Sage of the 6 Paths and originated in a foreign land, and was said to be the strongest martial art ever. She shakes it off and smiles at him. "Well, you certainly shoot for the stars, don't you, Naruto-kun? Well then you may have that scroll and learn from it. Now let's head back upstairs and get ready for dinner." He nods his head and with that they head back up to the main floor, and as they do he finally gets the memories from his clones. At dinner that night they discuss plans for tomorrow, including Naruto's first day in the academy, and then afterwards go to bed. Leaf Academy. Next day. The Leaf Village Academy is a large building painted in reds. On the front of it is the kanji for fire. As the new school week begins you can find children of all ages milling about outside along with their parents, awaiting for the teachers to open the doors. However, standing away from all the happy families are 2 boys. The first leans against the tree in the front of the building. He's a tall boy for his age, standing at 3 feet 9, he has spiky white hair, with dark eyes, and he has red lines under the corners of his eyes, and has slightly tanned skin. His name is Jiraiya, an orphan raised in the orphanage. The second boy is leaning against the side of the building. He is normal height for a boy his age, standing 3 feet 6, has long, straight black hair which goes down to the middle of his back. He has pale skin and slightly delicate features, however the most striking thing about him are his eyes. They are a golden color with slits for the pupils, and around the eyes is what appears to be purple makeup which extends part way to either side of his nose. His name is Orochimaru Habi, who was recently orphaned when his parents died during a mission. Suddenly the two boys' attention is taken by the fact that everyone becomes silent and stares in one direction. When they look that way they see why. The Senju family have appeared, however this time they have an extra person, a boy with short, spiky red hair and blue eyes, with slightly tan skin, wearing an all-dark red outfit. While most can only wonder at who the boy is, Jiraiya and Orochimaru each have differing thoughts upon seeing him. Jiraiya thinks, "Tch, another pretty boy, and he's probably a jerk like Orochi Tem." While Orochimaru thinks, he looks strong. Perhaps he'll finally be someone I can test myself against. Everyone begins to talk quietly about who the boy could possibly be, and why he's with Mito-sama and her family. Soon enough though the doors open and a couple chunin come out and direct the children inside. Naruto bids farewell to Mito and Amaya as Tsunade grabs him by the wrist and drags him inside into her classroom, leaving the two women to laugh. When they reach the classroom they find the teacher sitting there waiting and greeting all the students as they enter. When he sees Tsunade and Naruto he smiles slightly. The teacher is an average-sized man, standing at 5 feet 9, with mousy brown hair, and gray eyes. He wears the standard attire for a chunin which consists of an all-blue shinobi outfit, and some gray armor over his chest and back. The man's name is Iku's Hachibana, and he's a 35-year-old veteran ninja. He looks down at the children. "Tsunade-san, please head inside and take your seat. You young man must be the new student I was told about." Tsunade smiles at her friend and heads inside as Naruto nods his head to the teacher who continues, "Now I've been informed that you are a member of the Uzumaki clan and your unique situation. Know that I will not allow any kind of disruptions in my classroom, and I don't care what clan you're from or who you're related to, in my eyes you're just another student. Understand?" The redhead nods in agreement. "Understood, sensei. Trust me, I'm not here to play around. I've come to learn to be the best shinobi I can be." His response makes the man smirk as remarks, "Good. My name is Iku's Hachibana, but you can call me Iku's sensei. Now class is about to begin. I'll call you inside in a few moments and you can introduce yourself to the class." He heads inside and Naruto hears him telling the class to settle down as he takes roll call, then makes an announcement. "Alright class, before we begin we have a new student joining us today. Please do your best to give him a warm welcome. Come in." With that the redhead takes a deep breath and exhales it, then he opens the door and walks inside the class. Immediately his eyes scan the class to see if he can find any faces he recognizes besides Tsunade, and he finds both Jiraiya and Orochimaru who are on opposite sides of the room and both looking at him intently. Then he catches a face which looks familiar with a head of spiky silver hair and immediately knows that's Kakashi's father Tsukumo Hatake, as only a Hatake could have hair like that. He walks up in front of the teacher's podium, and smiles and waves shyly at everyone, as Iku says, "Now introduce yourself, just your name, likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future." The redhead nods and looks at the class as he does as instructed. "Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are ramen, learning new things, training, and gardening. My dislikes are perverts, the 3 minutes it takes for the water to boil for ramen, and anyone who puts another down. My dreams for the future are to be a great shinobi, bring everlasting peace to the elemental nations, and to have a family." Everyone has different reactions. All the girls besides Tsunade and one dark-haired one swoon at his dream of having a family. Most of the boys think his dream of everlasting peace in the elemental nations is stupid, all except Jiraiya, Tsukumo, and Orochimaru. After a few seconds Iku speaks up again. "Alright, thank you for that, Naruto-san. Why don't you have a seat next to Tsukumo?" With that he points to the boy in question who is sitting in the middle section, 3rd row, and Naruto nods and heads up there taking the empty seat to the left of the silver-haired boy. Thus begins his second stint in the academy. 6 months later. It's now been 6 months since Naruto came back in time, 6 months since he became part of the Senju family, and 6 months since he joined the academy, and it's been a hectic 6 months. He's been training like crazy. Every day he gets up at 5 a.m., goes to the Forest of Death, creates as many clones as he can, which is now 100, he then has them break up into groups of 10 to practice different things. The first group always works on chakra control, which they are now up to tree walking as they mastered leaf sticking. The second group works on shurikenjutsu, improving his aim. The third group works on the first of the basic three, the substitution jutsu, kawarimi no jutsu. The fourth works on the transformation jutsu, henge no jutsu. The fifth group works on the last, the normal clone jutsu, bushin no jutsu. The last 5 groups have been working on new skills. The sixth group has been working on the body flicker jutsu, shunshin no jutsu, which is a high-speed movement technique. The seventh and eighth groups have been working on the beginning stances of the Big Dipper God Fist, which has been going incredibly well. The ninth group has been learning all about human anatomy to help with his taijutsu style, while the 10th and final group has been working on the fuinjutsu that Mito started to teach him 2 months ago. As far as his physical exercise goes, he's getting more and more fit, especially with the weights on his ankles and wrists, which are now up to 10 pounds on each wrist and 20 pounds on each ankle, and he now does physical training with Tsunade in the mornings. As far as the academy goes, he's quickly gotten to the top of the class, and has been classified as a genius alongside his new friend Sakumo, as well as Orochimaru. That's another thing, he's made friends with a few people in his class besides Tsunade, the first of which is Sakumo Hatake, and he's found the boy to be a lot more sociable than his future son. They even spar outside of the academy sometimes. The second person he's made friends with is Jiraiya, who became his friend after he defended the boy from some bullies who were calling him dead last due to his terrible grades and his lacking skills in every ninja field. Ever since, the two have been great friends, and the redhead has even been helping the white-haired boy with his shurikenjutsu and the basic three. He's also become associated with Orochimaru, who sees him as a sort of rival, but has yet to take the step forward to becoming his friend, preferring to study and train alone. But he's made it his mission to break the young Sannin to be of that, thinking that if he can be a positive influence on the boy, then he won't become a crazy pedophile in the future. Another development in his new life is that it was recently learned that the Senju family will be growing by one more member, as Amaya is 4 months pregnant. Tsunade, upon finding out she was going to be a big sister, was ecstatic, saying that she was going to protect her little brother or sister from any and everything that would harm them. Naruto just congratulated Itama and Amaya on their news while going back to his calligraphy practice, which was a prerequisite to learn fuinjutsu. As a result of Amaya's pregnancy, Itama decided to stop taking missions for a while, instead taking up a job in the torture and interrogation division, also giving him more time to train Tsunade and help Naruto with refining his new taijutsu style against a superior opponent. But today will be different, as today Naruto and the rest of the class will begin training in their elemental affinities, but for the redhead, he'll start learning how to properly use his bloodlines after today. Leaf Academy. Ikusu's classroom. The veteran shinobi looks at his class, and can't help but to think about how much they've grown in the last 6 months, which is why he has no problem with starting them on today's lesson. He clears his throat, getting everyone's attention as he speaks. Alright class, today we'll be learning something entirely new. Now, as you all know, we've been teaching you all 3 basic jutsu, those being the substitution, transformation, and clone. Now those were to prepare you for more advanced techniques, and today is the true start of learning those more advanced techniques. As he looks around, he sees that he has every one of their attention, and smirks internally at it. He proceeds to take out 2 stacks of papers and continues, today we will be testing your elemental affinities. Now each ninja in the world is aligned to a specific elemental nature, which makes using jutsu of that element easier and jutsu of opposing elements harder. This paper I have here is called chakra paper, and each of you will be receiving a piece. What it does, it tells you your affinity. Now pay close attention to what I say next as I don't want to repeat myself. Everyone replies in unison, yes Ikus-sensei. He then goes into what Naruto has dubbed his Iruka mode, and starts to lecture. Now each of the 5 elements does something different to this paper. If your affinity is fire, it will burn to ash. If your affinity is water, it will get wet and turn soggy. If your affinity is earth, it will crumble and turn to dust. If it is lightning, it will crinkle up into a ball. Finally, if it is wind, the paper will split down the middle. He then takes one piece into his dominate hand, which is his left, and puts it between his fingers. All you do is you place the paper between 2 fingers of your dominant hand and channel your chakra to it, and it will tell you what your affinity is. After saying this, he does just that, and the paper burns down to ash, showing that he has a fire affinity, which causes all the now 5-year-olds to stare in awe, before they start to talk excitedly about what their affinities could be. He stomps on the floor to get them quiet. Alright, when I call your name, come up here, take a piece of paper and channel your chakra. At that point he begins to call names, and Naruto doesn't really pay any attention to most of them, as most of them get either fire, water, or earth. However, he pays attention when his friends are called, first of which is Tsukumo Hatake. The silver-haired boy walks down the aisle and up to the teacher. Taking his piece of chakra paper, he places it between the fingers of his right hand and applies his chakra, and surprisingly it crinkles up into a ball and emits sparks. Ikus whistles at this. Well, looks like we got our first special case. You have a lightning affinity, and from the looks of it, a strong one. Congrats, Tsukumo-san. Tsukumo nods gratefully to the man and heads back to his seat with a smile on his face. The next person Naruto pays attention to is right after Tsukumo, Orochimaru Habi. As the pale loner makes his way down to the instructor and does as everyone else did, however his is shocking too, as when he channels his chakra to the paper it splits in half. Ikus shakes his head at this. Damn, 2 for 2 on the prodigies and their affinities. You have a wind affinity, Orochimaru-san, which for the land of fire is incredibly rare. I've no doubt you'll be a powerful shinobi in the future. Orochimaru smirks at this as he heads back to his seat, and Naruto once again tones out Ikus-sensei, that is until he hears another friendly name called, Jiraiya no name. He watches as the white-haired boy scowls at the addition of, no name, to his first name, but still heads up to the teacher to take his paper. When he does, his paper burns to ash, showing he has a fire affinity, and after tossing away the remaining ash he heads back to his seat. A few minutes later he hears Tsunade's name called and pays close attention to see what her elemental affinity is. The blonde-haired girl excitedly takes the paper, hoping to have the same 2 main affinities of her grandfather, water and earth, so that she might also have inherited his wood-release bloodline. However, she is disappointed when the paper in her hand crinkles up into a ball, indicating her main affinity is to lightning. She scowls at the paper and tosses it in the trash as she turns on her heels and head back to her desk, pouting. After that, Naruto just tunes out the names again, thinking about the basic storage seal he was taught by Mito and how to improve it. He just barely manages to tune back in when he hears the name Izumi Uchiha, seeing as Uchiha comes before Uzumaki. The girl in question has the usual black hair and onyx eyes of the Uchiha clan, however her hair goes down to her mid-back, and she has a kinder looks to her face than most Uchiha. Izumi takes the chakra paper and channels her chakra, and unsurprisingly she gets a fire affinity, seeing as most Uchiha have it. Though she seems disappointed she does, maybe she was expecting a different result. After she gets back to her seat he finally hears it, Naruto Uzumaki, you're up. At this he smiles and hops out of his seat, making his way excitedly down to the front of the classroom. When he reaches the front he excitedly takes the paper and places it between the pointer and middle fingers of his right hand and channels his chakra. What happens next shocks everyone, even the usually stoic Ikus. His chakra paper cuts into 4 pieces and each piece does something different. One gets soggy, one burns to ash, one crumbles to dust, and the last crinkles up and emits sparks. Internally the redhead laughs at the faces everyone is making, however outside he tilts his head to the side confusedly and asks, Did I do something wrong, sensei? What does this mean? The man quickly coughs into his hand to regain his composure and answers, no, you didn't do anything wrong, Naruto-san, it's just that I've never seen something like this before. What that means is that you have a main affinity to all 5 of the elements. You are without a doubt going to be a powerhouse when you're older. You can take your seat now. Naruto nods his head and heads back to his seat and chuckles at the unbelieving face his friend Tsukumo is making. After that, class goes by as normal, even though most are wondering how the redhead got an affinity to all 5 major elements. After the academy lets out, with Iku's telling them that they'll all be given E-ranked jutsu of their elements to learn for then next 6 months starting tomorrow, Naruto heads home with Tsunade. However, when they get to the house they find Mito waiting out front, but standing next to her is Hiruzen Sarutobi wearing his official Hokage robes and hat, which causes the redhead to tense up slightly. Tsunade, however, greets the adults with sourly, "Hey Ba-chan, Saru Oja-san." Noticing this, Mito looks concerned and asks, "What's wrong, Tsunade-chan? Why do you look so sad?" The little blonde pouts as she explains, "We had our elemental affinities tested today, and I have a lightning affinity." Blinking at this, the red-haired woman gives her granddaughter a confused look, "What's so bad about having a lightning affinity?" Tsunade sighs, "I wanted to have the same affinities as Hashigigi. I wanted to be able to use wood release like him, and prove that I'm worthy to carry on his legacy." Sarutobi kneels down and takes her by the shoulders at that. "Tsunade-chan, you don't have to have Hashirama-sensei's bloodline to continue his legacy. You are his legacy. You carry his blood and his will of fire. Never forget that, young lady." This makes her feel much better as she rushes inside, leaving the 2 adults with Naruto, who upon seeing their looks chuckles nervously. 1 year later. Forest of Death. It's now been a year since the revelation that Naruto has all 5 major elements. That day when he got home he had a conversation with Sarutobi and Mito, who were both wondering how he managed it. However, he stuck to his innocent act and told them he had no clue, and that he didn't know what elements his parents had as they had never used elemental jutsu in front of him before they died. Sarutobi then offered to allow him to graduate early so that he could get a jump on learning to harness his elements and whatnot, but he declined, stating that he'd like to graduate with his friends, something with the 24-year-old understood. Over the last year, Naruto and his friends have all gotten taller and stronger. It's now a 3-way tie between Naruto, Tsukumo, and Orochimaru for Rookie of the Year, while Jiraiya, despite Naruto's help, is still the dead last, although that's only because his taijutsu is abysmal, and he can't make a bushin to save his life. Tsunade is by far the strongest kunoichi in the class, and unknown to the redhead has begun to develop a crush for him due to his kind nature and drive to improve himself, also because of how he is with her baby brother. That's another thing. About 8 months ago Amaya gave birth to a healthy baby boy, with tufts of light brown hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Naoki Senju. Today is a break day from the academy and Naruto can be found in his usual clearing in the Forest of Death, having left behind a strengthened shadow clone at the Senju house so as to keep them from being suspicious. The redhead takes a breath as he prepares to begin the next phase of his training, which is learning how to actually use the 3 bloodlines given to him by the tailed beasts. He takes a breath, makes the cross-shaped seal and calls out, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu." In a puff of smoke 200 clones appear. Another great thing about the year is that his reserves have gone back up to Anbu level. He decides to hand out his orders. "Alright guys, break up into groups of 20. First group, continue chakra control, combine the water walking exercise with the leaf and kunai balancing exercises." The first group salutes and heads over to the river to do just that. He turns to the second group. Group 2, work on the stances for that kenjutsu style I found in the Senju archives. Group 3, you're on the next kata for the Hokuto Shinken. The second and third group move off in different directions to do as they're told. The Kenjutsu-style Naruto is referring to is called Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu, Flying Heaven-Governed Sword Style, and is another ancient style he found in the Senju archives after taking an interest in Kenjutsu 6 months ago thanks to his friendship with Tsukumo. He turns to the next two groups. Group 4 you get to read the intermediate anatomy books. Group 5 your job is to work on the new seals Mito Obasan taught me. With their orders in place they go to do as told, even though the fourth group groans about having to read. He turns to the next groups. Groups 6 and 7 your job is to split into 4 groups of 10, each subgroup is to work on earth, fire, wind, and water nature training using leaves. The two groups salute him and move off to do their jobs. He turns to the last 3 groups. Alright groups 8, 9, and 10 your job is to begin training in our bloodlines. Group 8 you got magnet release, Group 9 lava release, and Group 10 boil release. Get to it boys. The 3 groups of clones move off to start their training, grousing about lazy-ass originals. Naruto himself kneels to the ground and takes out a storage scroll, releasing weighted metal plates from on seal within it and proceeds to add 1 more plate each to his wrist and ankle weights. Doing this increases their weight to 50 pounds per wrist, and 60 pounds per ankle, after which he reseals the remaining plates and puts away the scroll and begins to do his daily exercises, which have also increased to 50 laps, 100 each of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, jumping jacks, and chin-ups. Because of his workouts and a healthy diet he's much taller and better fit than he was the last time he was 6 years old, now standing at 4 feet 1 making him one of the tallest of his class just below Jiraiya who now stands at 4 feet 3. After his physical training is done he checks the time to see that he has only a few minutes to get home from breakfast so he body flickers from the forest and appears in his room after a few jumps, where his clone is already waiting for him and it looks as sweaty as himself, he dispels it and heads to the shower. While he's getting himself clean he can't help but think about how graduation is only another 2 months away, and wonders who his teammates will be and who their Jonin sensei will end up being. When he finishes and gets dressed he heads downstairs for the usual family breakfast. As he enters he finds that only Amaya and little Nawaki are already present. He smiles at them. Good morning Amaya-chan, and a special good morning to you Nawaki-kun. He tickles the baby's tummy getting him to laugh and clap his hands, as the blonde woman smiles at him. Good morning Naruto-kun, did you have a good training session with Tsunade-chan and Tama-kun? The redhead nods, sure did, though Tsunade-chan still can't keep up with me, although she comes pretty close, must be her quarter Uzumaki heritage. Amaya just giggles at this, and a moment later said girl comes walking in. Tsunade has changed only a little in the nearly 2 years he's been living with them. She's grown taller standing now at 3 feet 9, with a slender build for her age due to her training. Her hair is now kept up into a single high ponytail, and she now dons a light green short skirt kimono, tied tightly at the waist with a dark blue obi. The skirt has a slit in the left leg for ease of movement. Also you can see a hint of mesh under armor over her chest. On her wrists and forearms is red arm warmers which covers her wrist weights. Her feet are bare right now but she has bandages wrapped around her ankles and halfway up her shins which cover her ankle weights. All in all he can definitely see hints of her future beauty in her features now. Seeing him staring at her she blushes slightly, but decides to mess with him. See something you like Naruto-kun? The redhead realizing he was staring blushes and shakes his head. Sorry Tsunade-chan I was just thinking how much you've grown since we became friends. The blonde smiles at this and responds in kind, you've grown to Naruto-kun. I don't care what anyone says, to me you're the best shinobi in the academy. Orochimaru and Tsukumo are second best compared to you. Naruto nods his head in thanks as they take their usual seats at the table to eat, and a moment later Itama and Mito enter and breakfast begins. After breakfast Itama looks at the two kids, hey Su-chan, Naruto-kun how about we have a spar? The two of you against me. The blonde nods her head excitedly while the redhead smirk confidently, you think you can take Tsunade-chan and I together old man? After all, we are the best male and female student in the academy. The brown-haired man laughs loudly at this. Ha 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 ha. Confidence. I like that. After all, I'd expect nothing less of an Uzumaki. Don't worry about me, kiddo. I'll be fine. After all, I received private instruction from 2 Hokages, as well as an Uzumaki seal mistress. Let's head out back. The 3 proceed to head out to the training grounds out back, which is within sight of the back porch. The 2 6-year-olds stand across from the 30-year-old man, as they all proceed to get into their taijutsu stances. Tsunade and her father both take the stance for the Senju-style taijutsu called 1000 branch fist, Senin Shibuken, which is a style that revolves around overwhelming your opponents with powerful and unpredictable strikes. Naruto, however, takes the stance for the Hokuto Shinken. He takes a strong stance with his legs spread apart and bent, with his left leg leading his right. His hands are positioned in a specific way, with his right hand down low near his right thigh, and his left hand held up high in the air, and both are open-palmed. At an unseen signal, the 2 academy students and the Jonin shinobi rush each other and begin their spar. Leaf Academy. 2 months later. Graduation day. The day has finally arrived. Today is the day that the students will take their first step to becoming real ninja and become genin. Everyone arrived early for the tests and have been chomping at the bit for it to be over. The first part of the graduation exam was a written test which had 20 questions that were meant to test their tactical thinking as well as their knowledge of history. The second part of the exam was shuriken and kunai throwing. In that test you got 10 kunai and 10 shuriken, and each hit of the bullseye for the kunai was worth 10 points, while each hit of vital spots on the straw dummies for the shuriken was worth 10 points each. On that test most of the civilian-born got a 60/100ths for both, which is just passing for the kunai and shuriken. However, the ones who did better were the clan kids, who got 70 or 80/100ths on kunai throwing and 70/100ths on the shuriken. Only 2 kunoichi got more. Tsunade got 90/100ths on both, while Izumi Uchiha got 85/100ths on kunai, as one of her kunai was an inch to the left of the bullseye, while she got 90/100ths on the shuriken. After that, Jiraiya ended up getting 85s on both, showing his improvement. Then the 3 geniuses all got 100/100ths on both kunai and shuriken, although Naruto had to show off and throw all his kunai and shuriken at once, blindfolded. The third test was a taijutsu spar with a chunin. The rules were that you had to last at least 2 minuets to pass, and if you could last the full 5 without being co-ed or knocked out of the ring, then you'd get a 100 for the test. Most of the civilian-born kids just barely lasted the 2 minutes before being defeated. The clan children each lasted 3 minutes before being forced out of the ring or forfeiting. Tsunade went against Ikus himself and lasted 4 minuets and 25 seconds against him before he defeated her, while her rival Izumi lasted 4 minuets and 15 seconds against a Chunin kunoichi. Then Jiraiya got his chance and actually lasted 3 minutes and 50 seconds using the academy style before being knocked out by his Chunin opponent. Once again, Naruto, Tsukumo, and Orochimaru excelled in this test. The first one of the 3 to go was Tsukumo, who managed to last the full 5 minuets and even managed to get his opponent down to his knees. After Tsukumo was Orochimaru, who also lasted the full 5 minuets and even managed to beat his opponent at the last second by forcing him out of the ring. Naruto was last as usual, and he unsurprisingly lasted the full 5 minuets against Ikus-sensei, but he used his Hokuto Shinken and hit the pressure points in the Mon's left arm, right leg, and spine to bring him make it so that he couldn't fight anymore until the damage was reversed. When it was over, the redhead reversed what he did on the teacher, gaining the man's gratitude, and was told that his style was going to be dangerous when perfected. Now they were waiting on the final test, which is the ninjutsu portion. From what he's heard, the ninjutsu test consists of the basic 3, as well as an E and D rank elemental jutsu. Eventually Ikus-sensei begins to call names to come to the back room, and one by one nearly every person comes back in wearing a shiny new blue or black headbands. Of course, 1 or 2 of the civilian kids fail and don't get their headbands. All of the clan kids come back out wearing headbands, some over their forehead, others around their necks or arms. Naruto really pays attention when his friends are called. Tsunade goes inside and nails the ninjutsu portion. First she substitutes with a fern in the corner, then she transforms into her grandmother. After that she makes two perfect clones, and then body flickers from one side of the room to the other, leaving behind leaves. For her E-rank lightning jutsu she uses the lightning release, static strings jutsu Raiden, Saiteki Suji no Jutsu, to create strings of electricity that connect to a practice dummy and delivers small shocks to it. Then for her D-rank lightning jutsu she uses lightning release, lightning bolt jutsu Raiden, Reikurai no Jutsu, which she makes the hand signs and releases a short bolt of lightning from her hand which strikes the dummy and leaving electrical burns on its chest. Due to her perfect execution she receives her headband, which she asks for a green cloth, and ties it around her head proudly. As soon as she walks out with her protector, Naruto smiles proudly at her, causing her cheeks to heat up as she heads back to her seat. The next of his friends to go inside is actually Jiraiya, and the white-haired boy looks nervous as heck. Jiraiya once inside performs the substitution with a chair, then transforms into a perfect copy of the third Hokage. He just manages to create two usable clones, and body flickers about 100 feet, which is the least amount required to pass. Then for his E-rank fire jutsu he uses the fire release, burning leaf jutsu Kaden, Tensho Rifu no Jutsu, in which he creates a small amount of burning leaves in his mouth and spits them out at the test dummy, causing minor irritation to the eyes and chest. Finally for his D-rank he uses fire release, flash fan jutsu Kaden, Senko Uchiwa no Jutsu, which allows him to take in a fair amount of air while making three hand signs and then breath it out in a short funnel of flames which lasts only a couple of seconds in a shaped wave which causes light burns to the dummy. When he's done he receives his headband and walks out proudly, giving Naruto a thumbs up to show that his remedial lessons really helped out. Next is Orochimaru, who as usual is calm. He performs the first four techniques perfectly, going so far as to transform into a perfect reflection of his dead father. For his E-rank wind jutsu he uses the wind release, wind clone jutsu Futon, Kei's Bushin no Jutsu, which allows him to create a clone of himself made of wind which he makes attack a dummy and it dispels right after in a gust of wind. For his D-rank jutsu he uses the wind release, projectile deflection blast Futon, Hasha Taitawami Bakahatsu, which allows him to build up a lot of air in his chest, and the release it is a gust from his mouth strong enough to push back the dummy. Once he's done he gains his headband which he ties around his left arm, and walks back into the classroom and quietly takes his seat. After that is Sakumo, who performs the first four perfectly. Then for his E-rank lightning jutsu he uses lightning release, lightning clone jutsu